Welcome. Good evening and happy World Bee Day. I'm Aaliyah Vinnick. I work at the Science Museum of Minnesota, and we're so glad you're here. In normal times, this part of the evening is where we would be mingling with guests, chatting at the bar, and sharing fun science tidbits with all of you before the event formally began. Instead, we meet in this virtual breakout session, though I think you'll find this presentation every bit as fun and interesting, or even more so, than party small talk. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge our sponsor, H.B. Fuller, who've made this conversation possible.
Hi, I'm Aaron Plumley, Packaging Technical Manager at H.B. Fuller. H.B. Fuller is one of the world's leading adhesive manufacturers. We are committed to helping divert waste from landfills. In the United States, 52% of municipal waste is landfilled. At H.B. Fuller, we help increase the percentage of waste that is recycled and composted. Our adhesives and tapes help enable product packaging to be efficiently recycled and add usable fiber to the recycling stream. Hi, I'm
Great. And now we join a conversation about the lessons we can learn from local flora and fauna in our own backyard and ways that we can support community science efforts with Dr. Laurie Fink, our Chair of Science, and Field Biologist Amber Burnette. Welcome.
Thanks, Aaliyah. Hi, as Aaliyah mentioned, I'm Laurie Fink, and I'm the Chair of Science at the Science Museum of Minnesota. I have the privilege to lead the Center of Research and Collections, a group of museum scientists and collections professionals. Our research spans the subjects of biology, people and cultures, paleontology, global change, and water, mainly lakes and rivers. At the museum, our scientists collect data in order to learn more about the world around us. This data is then used to suggest evidence-based solutions for the problems that face us all. Museum scientists collect data from our water samples, prairie plots, mud cores from the bottom of a lake, field sites like archaeological and paleontology dig sites, and from our collection of over 2 million objects. We are in the middle of a climate emergency, and some of this data can tell us about our changing climate. I'm going to talk more about data and how you can be involved as a community scientist after Amber shares information about how to create a healthy ecosystem in your own backyard. Amber, take it away.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Aaliyah, if you could move to the slide that has a couple of pictures. Thank you so much. My name is Amber Burnette, and I work in the Museum Experiences Division. Our evening is all about celebrating science, and that means engaging with science. Science is a living, breathing, active thing that all people can contribute to, and there's so many ways to do it. My path to think about my own backyard adventures and ecology maybe started out a little bit like yours. I, at the University of Minnesota, where I went to school, took the Master Gardener class, and many of you have probably done that. And if you are not in Minnesota, you have a state or other office that offers that wonderful service. When I bought a house, I started thinking about my own backyard and what I might be able to provide for the wildlife that I was seeing around me. And then I took it a step further, and as Laurie mentioned, started thinking about what kind of data I could add to the body of knowledge that we're gaining. And I started using bird banding as a way to learn about how we can teach environmental education. And that's a really great way to learn how basically that birds are the best teachers. Aaliyah, if you could go to the next slide, please. Now let's think about what your little part of the world can do for birds and pollinators. We know they can use all the help that they can get. Birdscaping is a term, I didn't come up with it, but it's pretty great, that basically comes up with ways to plan for offerings year-round in your yard. And the great thing about this is not only is it going to be great for the birds and pollinators, it's going to be terrific for you too. One of the main ways is to think about planting with natives and perennials. And one of the reasons that's so great is because, especially here in the Midwest, native plants are pretty used to having a lot of water one year and a drought the next. So their root systems can handle that, and you don't have to spend a lot of time watering or fussing with them. My house is kind of down a hill, so I notice when it rains quite heavily that soil and a lot of things actually run downhill. Again, those root systems are going to help hold soil in. Pesticides are certainly things that we would think about from the Science Museum standpoint, and from other ways where you think about how that will interact with other parts of the environment after it's done the job of whatever it's going to do. And think about these natives that are used to having pests around them, and the fact that they can actually kind of survive those things. I'm also the envy of my neighborhood because I don't have to do a lot of mowing because my perennials live really well and make new friends. Aaliyah, if we could do the next slide, please. So now let's think about your yard as an ecosystem, and let's think about it in a year-round, or what we call an annual cycle. As we all are starting to think about traveling now, we know that we need things like gas stations, restaurants, and hotels to get us where we're going. And birds and pollinators think along those same terms too. Your yard can provide those things if you think about plantings, especially now while we're in what we call the spring migration. And this map is from a citizen science project called Journey North, which is tracking ruby-throated hummingbirds as they are moving north. You can see that they are here in the Twin Cities, and they're also in Canada already. These birds will use your yard for their gas stations, restaurants, and hotels on the way north. They'll use them while they are breeding in the summer, and they'll use them as they return in the fall when they go south. Aaliyah, the next slide, please. Another thing that you can do if you don't have the opportunity to put a lot of plantings in is leave snags if it's safe to do that. You might be able to encourage cavity nesters like black-capped chickadees, or if they're large enough, a family of great horned owls. They don't make their own nests, so they will use a cavity in a tree. You can also supplement your yard with pools, which are basically bird baths, and feeders, which will help with birds getting a break with your restaurant in your backyard. Laurie, please let us know some more.
Thanks, Amber. Thanks, Amber. Before you start adding those hotels, gas stations, convenience stores to help your birds and pollinators, you can start making those observations and tracking change. And by tracking changes in the natural world, we can learn about change over time. So here's an example from something that's a little bit further away, but the lesson still holds true. And it's about the cherry blossoms in Japan. So for the past 1,200 years, the people of Japan have been recording the date the cherry trees fully bloom in Kyoto, Japan. So this is now happening this year. It has happened earlier than ever before, and you can see that on the chart here. Having this long-time data really allows us to see the trends and not the noise of the year-to-year change. So there's no time like the present to start this data collection, because the scientists will use this data to test and form hypotheses. Aaliyah, can you go to the next slide, please? So what can you do? You can become a community scientist, otherwise known as a citizen scientist. You can make observations, write them down, and share these observations with established projects. So I'd like to introduce you to Cheryl. Cheryl is Sean's mom, and Sean is one of our senior scientists at the St. Croix Watershed Research Station. And his mom has been collecting data for about 45 years around her home and on her property. So she's been tracking data about rainfall and sharing it with the Cooperative Observer Network. And she's been tracking ice on and ice off of the lake on their property and sharing that with the Minnesota Phenology Network. So you can do this too. You can hypothesize about how visitors to your yard might change as you start to evolve your backyard ecosystem. Aaliyah, can you go to the next slide, please? So after tonight's event, we will be sharing several resources with you. But to get you started as a community scientist, here's some things to get you thinking. If you'd rather participate from the comfort of your own couch, Zooniverse would be the place to go, where you can help with data collection and data analysis. If your priorities are to be outside, then I would recommend using the iNaturalist app, where you can make your observations and add them to the application, and you can share that data with scientists. And you can learn a little bit about what you're finding too. One thing to remember is to not follow my lead and to actually sign up for the project. So here's a picture of my rain gauge, and I've been collecting data. And in fact, in the past day and a half, we've had over an inch of rain. But I haven't yet signed up for the CocoRa's project. So that data is only doing me good and nobody else. So I encourage you to actually sign up for the projects. So you'll never know where this leads to. The Science Museum of Minnesota's biologist, Dick Olenschlager, has been collecting biodiversity data in Wadena County his whole life. Now, the museum has a robust biodiversity record thanks to all of his collecting in Wadena County. So I thank you for coming tonight and learning a little bit more about our collections and the work that we're doing here. And I will turn it over to Aaliyah.
Well, thank you both so much for your presentation. I'll definitely think about all those citizen scientists the next time I'm watching birds out my back window. And thanks to HB Fuller for sponsoring tonight's conversation. And now we're going to return to Pat and the rest of the program.